Welcome to the Power Curve. I'm Holly Scott. In our podcast, I have the pleasure of chatting with accomplished industry executives around decisions they made along their career path with the idea of empowering you, our audience, as you navigate your career trajectory. Today, I am pleased to have Jill Binney, the leader of the commercialization effort at Active Surgical, a really interesting young company. Thanks for joining us today, Jill.
Yes, thanks for having me, Holly. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Ever since I met you, I knew that we had a kinship, and I'm just so glad that we're able to sit down together and speak specifically about your career and development along the way. Before we jump into that, though, Active is exciting, and especially coming from the industry and knowing surgery the way you do. Your experience is strong there. Can you tell us a little bit about the state of Active and what you're excited about?
Yeah, for sure. We've hit some major milestones in the last month here. So our company and our mission is to democratize surgery. And we're looking to do that through a couple of different ways. One is to provide better visual information to surgeons so they can make intraoperative decisions that they just don't have the information to do that today. And the second is the collection of that data and enhancing the compute power of that data to make it useful to bring forward better insights and algorithms in the future. So with that said, we hit a major milestone, and we had an FDA clearance of our Active Site product, which is our hardware agnostic imaging module that fits between traditional laparoscopic cameras and scopes that are in the OR today. So we have an agnostic platform that seamlessly will fit in. So it allows hospitals and surgeons to acquire our technology without the typical capital hit that would take to acquire a technology like ours. So we're excited about that FDA clearance milestone, and then look forward to launching that product later this year out into the market within the United States.
It's super exciting. I love the term, and I want to expand on it a bit, democratizing surgery, because I didn't really realize what a challenge it was in the market in a twofold way. First of all, there's a significant population of the world that has no access to surgery, and the idea of integrating technology and allowing for more robust opportunities there alone is significant. And then complex procedures, which I know Active was initially really focused on some of the most challenging procedures to allow for perhaps the less experienced surgeon or the one who may not have as much exposure to that specific clinical challenge to have better outcomes. I mean, there's some real opportunity in that space. It's not exclusively a lofty term. I mean, there are legs here with the way technology is allowing med tech to accelerate.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think we're approaching it from a different angle, that we're building a platform, an agnostic platform, and really trying to enable the masses, but also to harness that knowledge, as you said, of those top surgeons across the globe, not only here in the United States, and really provide that information to everyone. So hopefully the platform's accessible to everyone, and then that knowledge base just becomes accessible as well. So that was one of the things that really excited me about Active. I've been with the company about a year and a half now, but the approach is different than typical med device, and more of an enablement of everyone versus looking to kind of monopolize with your specific product or your specific brand. So we want everyone to do well, and we want everyone to be able to access the technology that we're building.
It's fantastic. I'm super excited. I was thrilled to see the approval and the excitement here for, especially for you on the commercialization side. It's time to put the pedal to the metal, right?
We are excited about it for sure. Yes.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, you mentioned you joined about a year plus ago, and I know you had a substantial career in big corporate, a big corporate player, giant. You were extremely well respected, did extremely well. What brought you to this little young company? What attracted you? And I'm curious on how that transition's been.
Yeah, for sure. I had a great career. I was 17 years with a large med device company, and super thankful for that opportunity. As I look back, that's how I grew up in med device, and I learned a ton and had mentors along the way, and very appreciative of that opportunity. But then I hit a spot in my career that it was what I was doing, I had done for 7 years, and I was very proficient in it. I built an incredible team of people that were excelling and doing really well. So in my head, I was ready for that next step. And that next step, it was one of two things. One is to advance in the large corporate organization, or two was to go to a startup. And as I looked at it, I really started to think about, what do I really want? What's really going to push me the hardest, and have allow that roadway or that opportunity to learn the most. And as I looked at it, the startup seemed to make more and more sense. So with that, started to explore different opportunities within that startup world. And through Todd, who ended up joining Active, he was serving as a mentor as I kind of went through this next step in my career, and he was great talking through the big company opportunities as well as the startup. But I really got exposure into a startup from an insider within my circle, which was really nice to have that opportunity to have those upfront conversations of, what does it mean, what does it look like, it's riskier, right? It's almost a jump off the ledge of comfort when you go into a startup. But I was really looking to grow, and felt that the startup world was going to give me that exposure and be able to do things outside of the large company that typically you work in a vertical, right? You're the salesperson or the marketing person or the PR person or whatever that vertical is. And in the startup, you're all of those people. So I really wanted that cross-functional growth within my career. And then the second piece of it is personal readiness, right? To do that. So it was a lot of conversations with my husband to say, it's going to look different. Like, my job will look different. My responsibilities were going to look different. And, we have a son who's in middle school, and it's important that he's in the right place. And as a family, it made sense. And as we talked through it, we were ready as a family to embark on the journey of a startup as well. So I think those were the two big factors for me.
That's huge, and that foundation, in order to allow for you to grow career wise, dialing back into your family, how you set up the communication between you and your spouse, your family at home, that's such a critical component that no one educates you on in college. You don't learn that along the way. You don't even really, it's not even discussed. A lot of times it's shunned. But the number one career decision that you can make is who you choose to spend your life with. There's no question about it. It will impact everything, every single aspect of it. So you're now, you're leading this commercial effort. You're really just about to roll here in some very exciting times. I want to roll back a bit, because our audience is looking as, how do I get there? How can I become that type of leader at some point? Early lessons, where was this drive instilled in you, Jill? And was it something that you can recommend training for, or working towards for those who may not have your same foundation? I'm curious where yours came from, and what advice you'd give to those real young, starting to think about where they're headed.
So yeah, that's a great question, Holly. And as I reflect on that, I think a lot of it came from my parents and my upbringing. That my parents really inspired. I'm the oldest of four, so we had a larger family, and maybe with that you have to scrap a little for what you want in life with having brothers and a sister. But with that, our parents always told us that we can do anything we want in life, and kind of gave us that runway to do it. But with that, you have to earn it, right? In my upbringing, nothing was handed to us or given to us, but early life lessons were, go do it and earn it. And I think some of what my parents gave to us was, it's okay to fail. Know what you want to do, but if you stumble, that's okay. And we're here to support you, and we're here to make sure that you are successful. But the biggest failure would be not trying or quitting. So making sure that you really go after something. So I think as I look back in my upbringing, that was probably one of the more instrumental pieces of it. And I think for people today that are looking to be successful within their careers, understand what you want, define that, and have a real true vision of what that looks like. And then the second half is don't be afraid to go work for it. It's all the great things in life don't come easy, whether that's a relationship with your spouse or being a leader within a company. All of those things take a lot of work and effort, and nothing gets handed to you. So I think that's, although it seems like a very simple life lesson and pretty basic, but I think that's a foundation of where I am today.
Yeah, no, and it's the fundamental common theme with every success story I've had the opportunity to interface with. It's putting a plan in place and putting in the work, right? And then you and I are, we're in a similar boat with younger kids, and now we're tasked with instilling that in our children, to make sure in this world where everything's flashing at them in the blip of them, right in their phone and giving so much information at them all the time. How do we instill in them that work ethic and that real drive and determination? That's a challenge. It certainly is. So you went on to UF, and what did you study in school? What was your education?
Yes, so my career path was different in the beginning. So I studied communications disorders and sciences. So I was a speech pathologist for the first 6 years of my life. So I studied that at University of Florida, and then did a master's at the University of South Florida, and worked in the school system for 6 years as a speech pathologist within a classroom.
Wow. So what was there a moment that you said, wait a minute, there's something else out there that's calling me. The universe is calling me on something else. What went into that decision? That's a big shift.
There was definitely a moment. And so that career and that start, that at that time in my life, I couldn't have asked for anything else to be foundational for what I'm doing today. I mean, if you can imagine being in a classroom with 30 third graders, there's probably no harder job in the world than to garner the attention of those kids, right? So to be able to do that and grow in that was great. But there came a point that working in the school system, you're rewarded by tenure and number of years versus the performance and maybe what you put into it. And I learned a lot about myself, that was something that I needed in my life and I needed in my career, was to be in a performance-based role that really kind of rewarded for overperformance and the ability to do that. So with that, I had some friends that were in sales, some friends that were in pharmaceutical sales, some friends that were in med device sales. So I just started to network and talk to my circle about what that means and what that might look like.
That's so even then, and that's interesting because we've had a lot of conversations, and I didn't realize you had studied communication disorders and been involved with that for 7 years. That's a long time to know at that point that you were going to make such a career transition. It makes me understand and see more clearly why the transition from the big Fortune 50 company that you left and then came over to Active wasn't as hard as it could be for somebody else who'd been there for 17 years. You did something pretty bold and transitioned early in your life already, even though it wasn't the same type of startup. When you have a steady income and you have education, you have this continual loop. A lot of people deal with this continual loop with, this is what I said I was going to do, so this is what I have to do now, and this is what I need to do. But there's this other loop going that says, but that's not what I want to do. And that doesn't feel right to me. And that doesn't, and they conflict, right? And that conflict can either cripple you or it can empower you. So it's, Jill's a great testimony to allowing it to empower you and ensure that you listen to that little voice. Education is education. You still learned many things, even though your education may not on paper look like it lined you up to be a commercialization leader. Guess what? You're there now, and it's based on each step you took along the way, including that one. Sometimes knowing what you're good at is finding out what you don't enjoy.
Yeah, completely agree. And the way that I always looked at it too is if, I make this change and go a different path, you can always go back. I could have always gone back to being a speech pathologist. I could have always gone back to another large company. So I think I don't know if that's the safety net that I use to reason my decision out, but with that, definitely competing loops of what should I do and what does it look like. But I think with that, if you don't do it and try it, you never know, and you always wonder why. And I think that was maybe another thing that my parents instilled, that if you don't try it and if you don't do it, what you've lost is the chance to do that. So go do it and try it, and then you just make another decision if it works or it doesn't work at that point.
That's right. There's no failure. It's just a different outcome. A different outcome. You still learn. Have the lesson. But if your parents hadn't, and I got to give them credit, if they hadn't ingrained that into you to where that was your natural response, that you were okay with being on, I don't want to say incorrect, but on not the path of which you wanted to be traveling, and make and have the bold courage to change gears. If your upbringing had been different, it may not have been that easy for you. And I see that quite a bit. I see people who feel roped into what they got their education in and feel held hostage by it. So that's kudos to you for that. So you started in, your first sales role was where? Was it at Olympus?
It wasn't. So as I made that decision to go into sales, my resume didn't look right to get a job in med device. I was a speech pathologist in the school system. So, and maybe this speaks to how I've done things in my life. So it was a lot of hustle and a lot of grinding it out and going on interviews, lots of rejection. You're not right. You can't do this, right? So with that, I think as I interview people, I think there's three things in my career that I look for now. It's passion, drive, and grit. I can't give that to anyone. But if you come to the table with that can accelerate people within their life. So I think that's what I did at that time. And I'm like, I'm going to get some type of healthcare sales job. So the first job that I got was actually networked through a teacher that I was working with. Her husband was in healthcare sales, and he worked at a small company and said, let's do this. Like, I'll roll the dice on you and see where this lands. So very thankful to Jeff for that opportunity early in my life, but that was my first break into the industry.
Wow. Okay. So again, comes back to that circle, that small circle. I love to believe that our firm is a powerful source for those who are seeking opportunities, and we certainly are plugged in. The reason that we're a source is because we connect good people to good people. The better source, or at least the one that you can naturally and organically build on, is your own network, and getting to know people and allowing them to see what makes you strong and what makes you valuable. So that person who referred you into the organization, chances are he saw something in you that he knew would likely translate that, and he took a chance on you, right? He knew that you had it in you, and that's because you had demonstrated it somewhere. So we don't get out of the box of it's got to look right on a resume, get out of the box of it's got to look a certain way on LinkedIn. Those two things are important, but the bigger piece is, who are you and what value do you bring to a market, to an organization, to an opportunity? Because the stakeholders around that, if they see that, they're going to be more apt to pull you in. And that's where those circles develop, and they can really facilitate you along your career over its entirety. Have you kept in touch with that particular mentor?
So we've lost touch over the course of time. It may have been 25 years ago at this point, but it's been a little bit of a time gap, but super appreciative for the opportunity. And Holly, you just said it, but that was one of my biggest takeaways, as I was in an opportunity that I could then hire and start to build a team. Was it's not always what you see on paper, and is working with recruiters like yourself or other folks in the industry, just to say, it's drive, passion, and grit. I'm looking for someone outside of the box. We're trying to build a high-performing team, and yes, people that have experience definitely are, a part of the teams that have built in the past. But sometimes that out-of-the-box person really wants to do it. They have more drive and desire, and they have something to prove almost. So that person oftentimes will run through a wall to get it done and make things happen in the organization. So that's been one of my biggest takeaways is, someone rolled the dice and took a chance on me. So it's something that I look to do as I interview people and make sure that those core competencies are there, which are tough to interview for, but you can figure it out.
Yeah, you can you can read the tea leaves, right, with past
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and past experiences and how they've stood through time. There's one thing that's unique to you and other some very good leaders is that you're willing to give trust first. So what
Mm-hmm.
I mean by that is you're going to assume that what you see is what you get and that that person's going to operate in the goal's best interest. And you don't doubt that. And the reason I know that is because you did that with me. When we first started working together, and I know you'd heard of me through Tom and Todd and Tom, but at the end of the day, you said to me exactly that. You said, "Look, I don't need necessarily to see exactly something on paper. You know, there are certain things that I want to see experience-wise, but I'm looking for those three qualities because those three qualities are really important to me." So you empowered me with, she's going to allow me to interview for these particular skills and then bring you whom I think is strong. And with that, I had an additional layer of responsibility because to me, it was not about, it was, yes, I have to find you the right person, but I also have to make sure you've given me trust. I want to earn that. I want to show you and confirm that I deserve that. So that builds that reciprocity. It's natural for you. It's not natural for a lot for other leaders. Sometimes that's tough. Where if you've come from a school where it has to be earned, it has to be keep them at arm's length until they can inch closer. Where you're saying, hey, here I'm going to give you trust. I'm going to care. I'm going to help. I'm going to develop you until you show me that that's not the right thing to do for the business. Right? I'm going to allow you to step up, and that does tend to bring out the best in people. I've seen that happen time and time again, especially for those people who are coming from a point where they don't have everything on paper, but man, do they want to prove it to you.
Yeah, I can completely agree, and that well said of my mind thinking and how I approach the situation. And it's been interesting, Holly, over the course of time and people that I've brought onto my team. As you said, not everyone is used to working in that type of environment, and can think of examples where people are looking for a lot of affirmation of, is this what should I be doing? Is this what it should look like? And my answer is, I hired you because I think you're great. I think you're going to crush this. You're in a director level, executive director level, sales leader role. Go do it. Go run at it. I think we need to hire great people and let them go get it done for us. And then I'll, of course, be there to understand what strategy is and be there to support them. But I've seen some people make that transition in their head, and it doesn't oftentimes come natural to people to do that and to get to that place where they say, yeah, I'm gonna really own this and do this on my own, if they've been in that past environment where they have to prove themselves first. But I do think we get the most out of people when they're empowered and trusted, because they're comfortable to make decisions and they're comfortable to challenge executive decisions. It's no one person is ever right. It should be the collective decision of a team to get to that point of great.
Well said. And that is the magic formula for a really highly effective team. When there's a level of of confidence. I don't want to say comfort. You shouldn't be comfortable discussing challenging topics, but there's a level of confidence that you can, and there's a give and take. And at the end of the day, you're still in a position of authenticity and trust. You can come back to that foundation. Man, it can be powerful. It can be powerful. And you also talk about retention. That's the individuals that you're empowering now have the fulfillment. When they're calling people like us, it's because they're lacking fulfillment in some capacity. And often it's what you can't see. It's often much more than it will. It's very, very rarely about pay. It's very, very rarely about lack of promotion. It's much more common to have a lack of trust or candor or influence or impact in the role that they're holding. That's where people really fall off. And those are the grays that you don't see when you're looking black and white, which so many leaders tend to get in one camp or the other.
Yeah, agree with that, Holly, for sure.
Yeah. Now, as a leader, and I know you've been leading people for many years now, there tends to be one point that typically, sometimes might even wake you up at night, but some kind of curveball, right? Something along the way that really challenged you, may have really been, a bear at the time. But I'm curious, if you want to share details, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay. What I'm really interested in is how you took the situation, how you processed it, and how you turned it around into an outcome.
Yeah, it's a so that's a great question, and I'm going to use joining a startup as that experience for me. So as I joined, my title is VP of Sales and Marketing, and I've been a commercial sales and marketing leader for a lot of my career, more on the sales side, but exposure on the marketing piece. And to me, it's product marketing of med device. I'm like, yeah, I've got this. I understand how to do it. And then as I got a couple weeks into the role, it was, Jill, you're also doing all of the PR efforts. You need to redesign our brand and develop a website or do a website redevelopment. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I don't do that. So I had this, wow, what did I just left a really great job at a really great company, and I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And there's a huge pressure for me to perform and do this really well. So I had a couple of nights of not sleeping or waking up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, what have I done to myself as well as to active that I've just committed myself to, because I'm not going to be able to do this at the level of professionalism that the company needs from me. And then I got over it, Holly. I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is why I came here. I'm going to embrace this challenge and figure it out. And with that, there was some things that I was able to do and learn on my own, to do some research and read some books. But then there's always opportunities to tap other people within your circle. So for me, that was on the PR front, it was tapping one of our VC partners or investors to say, we need help, or I need help specifically with the PR effort. What should it look like? You guys have done this before with 1,000 other startups. What are some recommendations and what does that look like? Which then led to going through an RFP to interview a couple public relation firms that could help to lead that effort for us, because that piece is so important for a startup, is to have that voice out in the market of what and how you're doing things, not only for the company, but also for recruitment efforts, that you want great people to notice your company and start to become a piece of it, and then building the brand on top of that. So I think with that, that's been one of my biggest curveballs of, not sure if I signed up for the right thing. And then to me, it was a mindset change. Yeah, I did. This is what I was looking for. I was really looking for this bigger challenge and cross-functional understanding of not only the commercial side, but all of the other pieces that builds a business, and putting that together. And I think it was just diving deeper into the deep end of the pool to figure it out and say, I can do this. Let me figure it out, and let me figure out how my effort and knowledge needs to be amplified by others within my circle.
Well, I'm glad you stuck it out. And I know I'm not the only one at the team.
I'm very proud as well. And I share that with Todd. I'm like, there's a couple of days that I'm like, man, what am I doing? So,
Well, if you didn't have those days, I wouldn't believe you, because I think we all have those days, but certainly that kind of a transition and picking it up. So when you're in those moments where you felt perhaps overwhelmed or just, what the heck am I doing? What did you, is there anything that you personally do to navigate through those moments, or are you one that has practices around clearing your thoughts, or bouncing it off of your spouse, or how do you typically problem solve? What's your go-to?
I think what I look to do is say, okay, so what does this end game need to look like? So if we're doing a brand refresh, what am I looking for that to be a year from now? And really having that future vision of what it looks like. And then, okay, so how do I get there, and what are the steps, and who do I need to bring in to get there? So I'm very a personality, let's have a plan, let's go do it and execute it. But then on the other side of it too, Todd is my leader, is just a leader that embraces people, and he understood the position that I was in, and that would be an area of growth for me. So just to have that transparent conversation, like, Todd, I don't know how to do this, but I guarantee I'm going to figure it out for you and with you. And I want you to be a part of this process. So I make sure that the end result is not what I think it is, but what the company needs it to be and what you as our CEO needs it to be as well. So I think that helps me to process it and make sure that I'm on the right path, right? There's a vision and a product that I'm working towards, but then bringing the executive leadership team along with me to make sure there's a one vision, and you don't get to the end of it and everyone's like, yeah, no, that's not what we needed, right? So it's a little bit of a definition of path, but then bringing folks along.
That's powerful. So you step back, you look at the end game, you're looking at the long range goal or short range goal, whatever it might be, reverse engineering it and having steps along the way where you're pulling in your stakeholders, getting sage advice, getting feedback, getting buy-in, getting counsel. That's that's a powerful tool, especially when you're in the moment, because sometimes those days where it's like, the world's caving in. I know personally on those days, I usually am absolutely useless. I can't do anything that day. I have to sleep. And then the next day, I'll have a cup of coffee and say, okay, now where am I going? And giving yourself time to, step out of it and look, not what does Jill have to do, but what are we trying to do? Thinking at a higher level and then creating that path forward. That's really powerful. And I appreciate you sharing that. And it's interesting that Todd is a strong mentor for you. And I'm hearing in that particular example that he provides leadership as you do, where he knew you didn't have this experience. And he brought you in because he knew you could do it, or he believed based on what he had seen, and he trusted you, that he knew that you had the right foundation to step into it and figure it out. And then he was willing to be with you and help figure out that along the way. What advice would you give to those looking for mentors like that? What was there something that you think helped you to get these pinnacle relationships in your life?
I do, Holly. I think part of it is early on in your career, or at least for me, I did my job. I showed up. I did really well. I overperformed at whatever I was handed. So I think with that, if you're looking for an executive level mentor, you have to do something that gets you noticed to a certain degree, that someone knows that you want to be in the company, that you want to do the job, that you want to do something else in your career. And I think step one is showing up and doing what you've been hired to do. And I think after that, then you start to, you're provided opportunities. And in large companies, it was things like, we would like you to be a trainer. We're doing a task force to figure out a new product launch. We would love for you to, sit at a round table and help us discover what it should look like from the insights from the field. And I've seen it happen in two different ways as people get invited to those kind of next level opportunities. Some people show up and they're afraid to give an opinion. Other people show up and they realize why they've really been invited, and it's exactly that, their opinion. So I think I would encourage people that as you kind of get to that next stage and you have a seat at the bigger table, realize that you're there for a voice and people want to hear your voice. And it's not always right, but that's why that group is there, right? To share ideas and get to what will be great or what's going to be best. And people want to hear what you have to say. So don't be afraid to contribute when you're at that next level, because that's really, in my mind, what gets you to even the further level that someone says, oh, they're thinking beyond their job, they're thinking beyond their role. They're looking at this more from a overall business perspective of what it really needs to be. They have more of a strategic mindset. They get it. They get cross-functionally what needs to happen and how we work together. So I think those are some of my early learnings. And I see that as as I've been able to bring people to those different kind of phases in their careers as well. And the people that engage are the people that really start to excel and really start to have a network of mentors that it's their choice who they can pick and choose from, because at that point they've probably had exposure to a lot of an executive leadership team, and you can kind of pick who you want to engage at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge step professionally when you can start thinking past the individual impact that you make and on your own career, and start thinking in the big picture of what's in the best interest for the company and how can I bring value to that equation. When I see that shift, I know people are on the right path, and that's where leadership really starts, is when you stop thinking as specifically about your role and how you impact it and how it impacts you. Take off the selfish hat and really start thinking more altruistically about the business overall and the company. So, yeah, really great point. All right, so for fun, what are you listening to? Got any podcasts going or a good workout playlist these days? What are you doing for fun?
So the latest thing is my husband, son, and I are listening to Shoe Dog, the story of Phil Knight and Nike. So I had read the book
interesting.
a couple of years ago, and maybe you mentioned this early. I think things come fast and easy to our kids these days. So my son's into sports and likes to play tennis and does cross country and things like that. So I'm like, let's listen to this as a family. So whenever we jump in the car and we ride around, we get to hear a chapter or two of the book. And I'm like, listen to how many times, like, Nike shouldn't be a company based on Phil Knight's journey. Like he was kicked so many times and just had the perseverance to continue to push through and make things happen. I just thought it was a fun story for me to re-listen to, but then just to start to have a little bit of that guidance for my son to be able to listen to it and kind of go through that experience. The funny thing is, I think my husband likes it. He's like, likes it the most. He's like, this book is great. This is so fun. So that's been a fun family thing to be able to do.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to remember that one. I will definitely listen to it with my boys. That sounds like a good summer road trip book.
It is, totally.
Yeah. Keep them out of their phones and video games for a little while, maybe. Just a little reprieve. Well, Jill, thank you so much again for joining today. You are a pleasure. I knew you would be, but you are just your path is so remarkable. I know Active is lucky to have you, and I'm so excited about the next 12, 24 months and beyond for Active and the commercialization effort you have there.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. It was a pleasure talking today, and I'm excited about the continued journey at Active. We've got a lot of great things going with some huge milestones that we've achieved. So we're looking for the next 12 to 24 months to be really exciting of what we're able to do as we get out into the market. But thank you so much for the time.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Jill. Have a great day today. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Power Curve today. I'm Holly Scott. We'll see you next time.